In this tutorial, I'm going to show how you can create a basic PowerPoint slide, how you can use some of the more advanced design features, and how you can make sure that your presentation conforms with academic expectations. In the first part, I'm just going to talk about how to make a basic slide. You'll always need a title slide and then obviously your content. I'm not going to talk about the content in this workshop. You will need to go to your subject page and look at your assessment information. Make sure you carefully check your assessment question and your rubric and any other information that's been provided. A presentation always needs to include a reference list, and you may also be asked to include your student ID. So for example, include a photo ID. In the next part, I'm going to talk about how to create a basic PowerPoint slide. So we're going to begin just with a template of a title and subtitle. Always begin with something like this, so you can put in the title of your presentation and make sure you include your name, the subject, and the date. Now I'm going to insert another slide, a title and content slide. A basic slide would just have the introduction to the section and information put into bullet points. As a basic rule, use 5-5, which means have a limit of about 5 lines of text with 5 words per line. You can change the font size, font type and colour, and you can also increase the line spacing. This slide we're going to include an image. The stock images are licensed by PowerPoint, which means you don't need to include any citation. These images are free to use. So try and find an image that fits with your presentation content. And you can insert and resize any images that you want to use. Another option would be to use a 2 content slide, so you can put in some images and some bullet points at the same time. So I'll include something on, I don't know, meeting, and just put my content on the other side. Final thing that you can try is to change the themes. So if you go to design, you can change the theme and that will change the design of the slides all the way through. So you can see it's made the content slide a bit more visually interesting. You can also change the format of the background. So if you go to design and format background, you can change that white background and use either a solid fill colour or a gradient fill. In the second part, I'll talk a bit more about how to use images. As a rule, presentations should be visual and use images more than text. You can use images to represent people, places, ideas, so you could use images from photographs or graphs or other graphics. You do need to use text for some things like quotations, summaries, your in-text citations and your reference lists. But as a rule, try and reduce the text. Let's look at Google Images as a way of finding images. I'm going to look for an image of coals. If you go to Tools and go to Usage Rights, and Creative Commons licenses, then this will give you images that you are free to use. They're still copyrighted, but it means that the organisation is happy for you to use that image. This is an image I've found of Coles Supermarket in Flickr. So I'm going to save that image to my files. But I also need to recognise that this image came from Flickr. So I'm going to insert the image into my PowerPoint. And I just want to add a text box. And I'm going to put that I found that image on Flickr. So I'm including that in-text citation. There was no date on that Flickr image, so I'm just putting ND for meaning no date. That's just good practice to have a citation for your images. Another thing you can do with images is use an image in the background. In this style, a grey and white image looks quite professional with coloured text. So to do this, if you go to the Design button and Format Background, and this time we're going to insert a picture. You can use the stock image, but I'm going to use that image of Coles from my files. As you can see at the moment, that looks too bright. So what you want to do then, you can increase the transparency so that that image just fades into the background and it doesn't detract from your text. You can also correct the picture and recolor it to make it black and white. And then you can play around with the text, so you've got a good balance of text and image. In this section, I'll talk about how to reduce the amount of text in your PowerPoint. You can see these example PowerPoints have way too much text. It's going to be far too difficult for someone to read all this information at the same time as listening to you speak. So remember, the text is for your listener's use, not for your use. So this is a typical PowerPoint slide with the information in bulleted points. This has got too much written information. You don't need all this information. We need to reduce it down. So I've highlighted what are the key points that I need to include. And I'm just going to use these and not the rest of the text. You don't have to get rid of all that text. You can keep it and put it into the notes section. So then that text is there for your use. It doesn't have to be read by the person who's listening to your presentation. If you highlight the text and go to the Home button and look for this green icon, this is the Smart Art icon. If you click on that Smart Art icon, you can choose different ways to represent this text and it will reformat it for you. I'm going to use the example of blocks and images. So this is useful because I can add small images into these picture sections. If you click on the picture section and go to icons, you can search an icon that is relevant to your text. So this text was about Teams. I'm going to look for a Teams icon. Go, that's inserted, and this is an individual, so I'll just look for a individual person icon. Okay, I've finished my icons. Another thing you can do is recolor some of the graphics. I'm going to click on one of these boxes and go to Format and recolor it. I like to use different shades, so I'm going to make this a different shade of blue. And having your boxes in slightly different shades actually makes it easier for the person who's watching your PowerPoint to comprehend and identify the different material you're trying to explain to them. I'm also going to recolor some of the other graphics in a contrasting color, so I'll make my icons yellow. So you can see visually that actually gives a very strong impression. Final thing I'll show you is how to use the designer tool. The designer tool will only work when you're online. The designer tool uses AI and it reads your text and finds an appropriate image. So this text is about information security and it's found appropriate images for me to use for my title slide. And you can use the designer tool throughout the presentation with title slides and content slides. So this is going back to my leadership slide, and I'll try the designer button and see what it does here. It's going to generate some design ideas. So it's got images based on the idea of leadership, and you can change the formatting, choose what you think looks best. The final thing I'm going to talk about is the academic requirements for a PowerPoint presentation. So exactly in the same way as a written presentation, you're required to use references, citations, quotations, and paraphrases. So here, for example, I have copied this model from a website, and I've made sure that I've labelled this model as figure 1, identified what the model is, and included a citation. Again, here I've used a direct quotation, I've used quotation marks, and I've included the citation. The final thing that you always need to include in your presentation is a list of references. You can go to this QR code and that will take you to the KBS referencing guide. And then if you need any further information, there are some additional training modules here on presentation tips and using PowerPoint design. You can also contact the ASC for further information or for individual help.